homework sheet 7 solutions brought to you by the Loch Ness Cubic, as you can see at the top there. Not much writing in here. I'm just going to be explaining through many of these notes. Let's get going. Question 1, part A or part I. Our goal here is to make sure that 3 minus x is first greater than or equal to 0 because it's a square root. But because we'd be dividing by 0, it must be just greater than 0. So that's the key feature here to make sure we can find that implied domain. If we solve for x, we end up with x being less than 3. So again, if we're dividing or multiplying by a negative, that inequation sign changes. So just be careful there. And stating that as a domain, negative infinity to 3. Probably should be writing something like x is an element of. It's a good way to go about it. F of x here, probably should have rewritten this with our factorized 3 out the front, or negative 3. But this is, again, trying to avoid our denominator being 0. So this is going to be all real numbers, not including 2 over 3. So that's a great way to write that implied domain. And triple I, we're trying to make sure that x squared minus 6x plus 5 is greater than or equal to 0. In this case, including 0 is absolutely fine. Solving for x, we get 5 and 1. But that is not the end of it. We need to sketch that quadratic with our intercepts of positive 5 and 1, which I've done in a little sketch here. And then we need to state that domain, which would be negative infinity to 1 and 5 to infinity. So important that you're getting those features right. Question 2 and 3, I've used actually 2, sorry, we'll stick with that. I've used quite a detailed method of showing you each step from here. But I would certainly use this method if you're not very confident. You can kind of skip some of these steps as you go, but making sure that we're applying those transformations effectively to the previous construction of the equation. So you can see that I'm kind of building this equation as I go. Lots of marks on offer there, so lots of biscuits. Enjoy that one. Question 3, stating the transformations that have changed the square root of x to 4 minus the square root of 3 minus 2x. My first step was to factorize out negative 2 in the surd, so we've got negative 2 bracket x minus 3 over 2. And I want to state these transformations using Dr. T, dilations, reflections, and then translations. So our first one is a dilation by a half from y. Then we've got a reflection in the x-axis, a reflection in the y-axis, so there's our two negatives. Translation in the positive direction of the y-axis of 4, and a translation in the positive direction of the x-axis of 3 over 2. So stating all those transformations effectively is obviously really important. Question 4, finding a new coordinate. So first we've got a dilation from the x-axis of factor 2. That changes our y value by 2. Reflection in the y-axis, meaning that our 1 has become negative 1, so reflecting across that y-axis, and a vertical translation of 3 units down. Very straightforward question there. If you were struggling with it, though, I would sketch this coordinate on a Cartesian plane. I think that helps you visualize these movements around the place, kind of from an axis or across an axis for a reflection, or up and down, left and right. So that's a good way to do that question. Question 5, another build your adventure equation. Again, I want to make sure that I'm not making errors going through each step here. So I've set it out where I'm making a new function for each of these. I don't know why I'm missing a final letter there. That should be e of x, but there you go. We don't have a function stated there. So yep, that's it. And I'm missing a couple of bits here as well. So that should just be x to the power 3. I think we're okay for the rest of it. Just be careful with those, again, building each step, so just pause, check that you're doing all the right things. I like to kind of do it stage by stage, but again, you might feel more confident and feel that you can skip them, but I'd still recommend this as a method. Same with 5II, building each equation as we go through. So our first step, dilation of factor 2 from the y-axis, changing our x to x over 2. Again, if I expand that and kind of rearrange my function, I end up with 8 over x cubed. It makes it a lot easier to work with in this question. Same with the previous one there as well. Translation in the positive direction of the x-axis of 3. That's replacing x with x minus 3. Then we've got a, where are we up to? 3 units in the negative direction of the y-axis, that's minusing 3 at the outside, and then a reflection in the x-axis. So that is a negative in front of everything, and I'm just looking at it, and I think that should be a positive now. So, yep, that should be +3 as our final section there. So if we're doing negative of the previous function, it's a negative for the first term, and then our -3 is going to become +3. And a nice big one to finish off, an exponential. So we're looking at going through all these transformations to something that already has a few transformations there. So again, setting it up, replacing x with x minus 3, translating to the right 3 units. And we can simplify that, becoming x minus 1 as our power. We can then dilate by a factor of 3 from the y-axis, replacing x with x over 3. Then a reflection in the x-axis, so a negative in front of everything, changing all our signs. And then our final one is a vertical translation of 3 units up. Pretty easy. So check those, pause on those, make sure you're getting the same answers. If you're doing them a bit quicker, that's fine. Just make sure you're getting the correct solutions in any of those situations.